The Destiny Community Podcast recently interviewed Kevin Yanes and Samuel Dunn, and they spent a solid 90 minutes answering questions about Void 3.0. There were quite a few juicy nuggets of info that came out of the interview, and three in particular caught my eye, and nobody seems to be talking about them. The first was that scatter grenades charged by Chaos Accelerant will receive a buff of increased tracking range and more aggressive tracking. But the kicker is that Nothing Manacles will provide this buff to scatter grenades as a baseline, meaning you can forego Chaos Accelerant and instead run both Devour and Child of the Old Gods with Nothing Manacles for some of the most insane grenade regen in the game. We don't know exactly how strong of a buff to the tracking scatter grenades are getting, other than what was said on the podcast and this clip here from the Void 3.0 news article. I tried to create a similar scenario to compare how they behave currently by tossing a charged scatter grenade at the feet of a floating wizard. And while it's not a one-to-one comparison, it does seem that the tracking is going to be much better in Witch Queen. But regardless, the tracking is much less of an issue in PvE, where enemies tend to be clumped together, than it is in PvP, where you would be much better served using an Axiom Bolt grenade anyway. So in PvE, you can already pretty much spam the grenades and pull off plays like this. And this is just with the current voidwalker bottom tree Attunement of Hunger. Devour on its own has your grenade back roughly every 5 kills, which is already really good. But let's see just how strong we can take this build with Void 3.0. So because Nothing Manacles will gain the enhanced tracking from Chaos Accelerant by default, I think it's a waste to run that aspect with these. Yeah, it does increase the damage, however damage is not really an issue currently, it's already pretty good without it on bottom tree. Plus we'll be able to add what is essentially Oppressive Darkness as a fragment to gain 15% bonus damage. This means we can run Feed the Void for Devour, and Child of the Old Gods, which when using a Healing Rift will grant us Grenade, Melee, and Rift Energy. This combination is going to allow for non-stop ability spam. Just with those two aspects alone, this build is going to be ridiculous and offer everything bottom tree currently does plus more. But we've got 4 fragment slots which will make this build stupid. So that first slot is reserved for Echo of Expulsion, allowing all our avoid ability kills to cause enemies to explode. This is basically Bloom from top tree, which will make our scatter grenades even deadlier. As mentioned before, by not taking the Chaos Accelerant aspect, we're going to lose the bonus damage it provides. However, we can make up for some of it by running Echo of Undermining, which will weaken enemies and provide a 15% damage bonus, basically Oppressive Darkness. Another nugget of information that I learned from that interview was that each class will be able to run a max of 4 fragments depending on which aspects you choose. We've seen that Chaos Accelerant only provides 1 fragment slot, and Child of the Old Gods grants 2, which means that Feed the Void must also grant 2, allowing us to have a total of 4. This means in addition to Echo of Expulsion and Undermining, we can run 2 additional fragments. If we want to go with the pure ability spam route, then Echo of Provision could be the pick, where damaging enemies with grenades grants melee energy, and this paired with Child of the Old Gods, also granting both melee and grenade energy with the Healing Rift, should keep both of those abilities topped off. Now for the 4th and final fragment, there's a few options, but I think the best ones haven't even been revealed yet. But first, let's look at the ones we do know about. I think running Echo of Exchange, which grants grenade energy on melee kills, might be a bit overkill if you're already running Devour and Child of the Old Gods. I mean, the reality is, you only need so much grenade energy, so this could be better spent elsewhere. Echo of Reprisal could be a solid pick to increase super energy gained while surrounded. However, Bungie has hinted that there are 4 fragments locked behind the world's first raid completion, and I have a good idea what those might be. First of all, Kevin Yanes reiterated in the DCP interview that each class will be able to dip their toes into the other class's specialties through fragments. This means there is likely a fragment which grants invisibility, one that grants overshields, and one that grants Devour in some form or fashion. Because these fragments will be class agnostic, I wagered that the activation will be triggered by general void ability kills, maybe specifically by grenade or melee. This could potentially allow Warlocks to gain either invisibility or an overshield with each grenade kill. However, this approach would make the Feed the Void aspect redundant if you could just choose it as a fragment, so there must be something more to it than that. My first thought was maybe it's a weaker form of Devour that can't be extended on kill, or the requirements to proc it are much higher, such as needing multiple kills, or perhaps a more specific form of activation such as finishers, although that wouldn't work in PvP, so that's probably not it. Either way, we know it's going to be possible in some way to add either invisibility or an overshield to the voidwalker kit, and for PvE I think the overshield will be the play. Can you imagine not only every kill healing from Devour but also proccing an overshield? But invisibility could also be clutch depending on the activation method. In PvP I think both are going to be great picks depending on your playstyle. Being able to get off radar and sneak around invisible as a Warlock is going to be pretty nasty, or going the overshield route if you take a more aggressive head-on playstyle. Either way, all of this sounds amazing, but there is one more thing that the DCP interview hinted at, which is volatile rounds, which will allow your void weapons to cause enemies to become volatile and explode. Bungie has stated they want to reward players for matching their class element to their weapon element. So while this has not been 100% confirmed as a fragment, it seems the most likely. The example was being able to provide volatile rounds for Le Monarque, which as it stands is an exotic weapon, which rules out the possibility of this effect being granted by a weapon mod. While it is entirely possible it's a new type of charge with light mod, going by their wording of rewarding monochromatic builds or matching your weapon element to your class element, I would put money on this being one of the undisclosed void fragments locked behind the world's first raid completion. And the numbers line up perfectly as we have 4 unannounced fragments, 3 of which should be invisibility, overshield, and devour, plus the 4th, which I'm guessing is the aforementioned volatile rounds. I think any of these fragments could be awesome for that 4th fragment slot, but I think I'm personally leaning towards overshields for more survivability. So what do you guys think? Could this be the return of Nothing Manacles and scatter grenades? If nothing else, they are definitely going to be an incredibly strong option. But I also think that because we have so much ability regen built into the class now, that more utility-focused exotics are going to step forward ahead of Controverse Hold and Ezrax Sin. With Nothing Manacles granting a second grenade charge and better tracking by default, the Stag for increased survivability within those Child of the Old Gods rifts, Felwinter's Helm with the new ranged melee, and I personally think we're going to see the return of Skull of Dire Ahamkara. With so much ability regen built into the subclass, and this is before we even factor in any mods. Think about that. We haven't added Bomber, Kickstart, Firepower. Being able to get 50% of your super energy back from Skull of Dire Ahamkara might come back into play. We've got just 1 week before we'll find out. If you guys enjoyed the video and this type of content, go ahead and give it a like, and you might as well subscribe and click that notification bell to stay informed whenever I drop a new one. That's it for now. I'll see you all in Witch Queen soon.